really, we have to highlight a player who was all defense tonight. And you see him here on the top of the screen. And really, this is going to be an unconventional player spotlight, but we have to give it to him because without this specific player, I don't know if the Celtics win this ball game. And it's Mr. Jaden Springer. Jaden Springer, your SeatGeek player spotlight tonight, of course. CTW player spotlight brought to you by SeatGeek. Go use our code, of course, Celtics Weekly for a percentage off of your first purchase at SeatGeek. So don't forget to check SeatGeek out. But Jaden Springer, oh my goodness, where has he been this whole entire season? Now, I'll say this about Jaden Springer. Offensively, you see these numbers: 8 points, 2 of 6 from the floor, 2 of 6 from three, took all of his attempts from three. Don't pay attention to the offensive numbers or even the numbers for Jaden Springer unless you want to look at those 4 steals right there, because that's where the impact of Jaden Springer was felt the most tonight, is on the defensive end of the floor. And this is what Celtics Nation and even Sixers Nation as well. A lot of people in Philadelphia were not happy when Jaden Springer was traded away from the Sixers to the Celtics, but they all knew, everybody knows, Jaden Springer's best attribute, best ability out on the floor is his defensive presence, his defensive prowess on ball and even off ball. And my goodness, 4 steals tonight for Jaden Springer. I mean, it was almost like I don't know what to compare this with, but you see Steph Curry coming to a game, hit a couple threes. That's what it felt like with Jaden Springer on the defensive end of the floor tonight, just coming in and just swiping the ball all over the place, swiping it. And Jaden Springer, if he doesn't play late in this game, I don't know if the Celtics win this ball game. Came up with a lot of key turnovers for the Boston Celtics, and of course, hit maybe the biggest shot of the entire game for Boston down the stretch. As you see, Jaden Springer hits the shot, looks back at the Clippers bench. You saw James Harden, Norman Powell really trying to take him off his shot over in the corner three, whatever level you're playing at, high school, college, even the pros next to the bench there. It's one of the hardest 3 point shot. I shouldn't say it's the hardest 3 point shot to hit, because actually it's the most efficient shot in basketball. But at the same time, in terms of the difficulty of 3 point shots, you have the entire bench, you have the entire student section, whatever level you're playing at, that corner three is always pressurized because you're doing it right in front of people who want to see you miss and are just making the most audacious noises in the world in order for you to miss. And Jaden Springer, you saw Harden kind of Harden's sitting back right here. He's standing up on this opportunity and he was yelling in Jaden Springer's ear. Norman Powell as well. You see Mo Bamba right there, Nicholas Batum and Chris Dunn, and even Kawhi Leonard there at the end of the bench, all the guys out for the Clippers tonight. But Jaden Springer, he has all those guys in his ear on the bench. You even see former Celtics executive last year, Jeff Van Gundy, and former, of course, head coach in the NBA over there as well. He's probably giving him a little bit of something as well. And Jaden Springer just looks on back to the Clippers bench. This is one of the best feelings in all of basketball right here, is when everybody's yelling at you in the corner and you just drain that corner three, especially in this type of game situation where it's basically for the win. Jaden Springer, this three pretty much closed out the game. The Clippers were doubling everybody on this possession, even possessions before, just leaving Jaden Springer wide open. Ball comes over to Jaden Springer. Jaden Springer cashes in a 3 point shot essentially for the win, and then looks back at the Clippers bench and even gave him a little bit of a smile. You could tell he had a kiddish like smile on his face after this opportunity. When you're sitting on the bench that long, if you're Jaden Springer and then come into the ball game, play how you did defensively and do this, I mean, he's going to bed happy in Los Angeles tonight. And even looking back at this player graphic again, 8 points, 2 rebounds, 4 steals for Jaden Springer, 2 of 6 from the floor. Much deserved player spotlight for Jaden Springer. And really, this is what we've been talking about this season with the Boston Celtics as of late: is can you get a spark out of somebody else right now? Now, tonight, didn't mention this, but we're going to mention it now. No Kristaps Porzingis tonight. No Al Horford tonight. First night of a back to back. Tomorrow night's game will be against the Los Angeles Lakers. So you'd have to assume that is the reason. Both of them will likely play tomorrow against the Lakers. A little bit bigger of a matchup tonight. Nobody's really playing with the Clippers. Tonight, the Celtics are obviously able to handle business in a less than ideal way against the Clippers without Horford and Porzingis, but also Holiday was out tonight. So you'd think all three of those players were resting for the Boston Celtics. And with all of those guys out of the lineup, the Celtics, they needed to find a spark. And even with all those guys in the lineup, we've been talking about can Joe Mazzulla find a spark somewhere else? Can he tinker the rotations at the end of the rotations? Because Sam Hauser, thankfully, finally had a great shooting night tonight, 5 of 7 from the floor for Sam Hauser, 15 points on the night. But Sam Hauser has been nearly unplayable as of late. Nearly unplayable. You think about his shooting as of late, going 0-4, dropping eggs from the floor, and defensively, Sam Hauser is really not the best defensive player in the entire world. And you're questioning, if you're a Celtics fan and anybody in Celtics Nation, going, why is Sam Hauser playing right now? He can't hit shots, number one. His biggest attribute is hitting shots. He can't do that. And defensively, it can be a liability at times. So, what exactly is the upside of playing Sam Hauser over, say, a guy like Jordan Walsh, who the Jordan Walsh experience up to this point, his jumper actually looked great tonight, and it's looked great ever since preseason. We've been talking about Jordan Walsh's jump shot looking really pure, really silky smooth since preseason. And Jordan Walsh, we look at him and go, okay, his best attribute is actually on the defensive end of the floor. Offensively, he might be able to come in and do something in terms of hitting an open catch and shoot three from the corner, from the wing, doing something, not doing much with the ball in his hands whatsoever. Not a threat from that standpoint. But a lot of people are questioning, including us on here, maybe Walsh over Hauser right now for that rotation spot. But even looking further, Tillman, he hasn't played at all this season. And even going down the line, Baylor Shireman. Baylor Shireman played early in this game tonight. Can he give you a spark? But then Jaden Springer. How about Jaden Springer? Now, offensively, he can be a just complete zero at times, and we're going to talk about that in a second here. But defensively, Jaden Springer is a hound dog. Jaden Springer can get out there and really defend. And tonight, that is what we saw. We saw number one, Walsh out there. We saw Shireman out there early and Jaden Springer. But Jaden Springer was the player who gave the Celtics their bounce. And really, I don't want to say, yeah, I do want to say their momentum down the stretch. He's what gave the Celtics the ability to actually pull this game out and win. The Celtics, of course, had to execute with all of the main players, whether it was Derek White, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown in this matchup late down the stretch, specifically those three players, and even Peyton Pritchard as well. But Jaden Springer on the defensive end of the floor, doing what he did, allowed the Celtics to do what they did on the offensive end of the floor. And of course, Jaden Springer, you saw that 3-point shot, that screenshot. He contributed his part on the offensive end late in this game when he hit that three essentially for the win. I know people will say, oh, well, Kata actually hit the layup for the win down the stretch, but that Springer three was just as massive as that Kata game closing layup. And this is what we want to see, even with Kristaps, even with Drew, even with Al in the lineup, is Joe Mazzulla on some occasions when the Celtics just don't have it. Because we talked about this with the Clippers. The Clippers were playing a bunch of players who were excited to play tonight, excited to play in their roles. The Celtics, sometimes it doesn't look like they're excited at all to play. You think about the Raptors game, we're just beating a dead horse on that game right now because that was a terrible game. It was the worst game of the season for the Boston Celtics after they just put up their worst game against the Sacramento Kings 2 games prior. It's going to be like the second half of Oklahoma City. Y'all know I couldn't come on here without mentioning the second half against Oklahoma City or the Toronto game now. That's becoming the other one for the Boston Celtics, but specifically that Toronto game. Going back and looking at that game, the Celtics did not have any intensity or effort on the defensive end of the floor, completely going through the motions, not just defensively, but offensively as well. And in those games, when all the starters don't seem to have it going at all in terms of just effort, I mean, forget all the X's and O's, effort on the floor. Maybe you go to a guy like Jordan Walsh. Maybe you go to a guy like Baylor Shireman. Or maybe you go to a guy like Jaden Springer, who tonight pretty much won this ball game for the Boston Celtics. You're not going to see it in his offensive numbers or anything fancy like that. But my goodness, defensively, 4 steals, and nobody was getting past him. His activity on ball, his active hands, his ability to stay in front of his opponent 1v1, and even his off ball defense, too, just helping on different opportunities. Jaden Springer, he deserves player spotlight tonight. There's no doubt about it. And we were actually going to do it for Justin's Flowers when we were trying to fumble around with player of the game, who Jaylen Brown. It was going to be Jaylen Brown at first, but then he just had a terrible end of the game and really didn't help the Celtics whatsoever down the stretch. And it had to be Jaden Springer who did. Unfortunately, we actually don't have a Justin's Flowers out here tonight. We might have to do another breakdown on it. Not sure. Just disclaimer for the time being. Justin's not here anyway. He can give his flowers out when he's here. Maybe tomorrow night against the Lakers. We'll see. But Jaden Springer, he could have won flowers. He won player spotlight. If I'm going to give my flowers out tonight, I think we all know who I really want to give my flowers out to out there right now, of course. But Jaden Springer also deserves some flowers as well for what he did with the Boston Celtics tonight. And Jaden Springer won this game essentially for the Boston Celtics late in the fourth quarter and down the stretch because Joe Mazzulla at a certain point in time couldn't take him out of the game. Couldn't. This is what we want to see out of the Celtics. We want to see, or really out of the Celtics coaching staff, Joe Mazzulla, and the Celtics coaching staff, of course, that on opportunities and occasions where the Celtics don't look all that there with their effort, put in a player who's going to be excited to play. Peyton Pritchard is that player every single night. Peyton Pritchard is just yearning for more minutes every single night. And tonight, Peyton Pritchard did not have a good game whatsoever. I'll say that about P. But Peyton Pritchard, he's always bringing the energy out there. He is always fighting on the floor. That is the consistent presence of Peyton Pritchard. But all these other guys on the bench, they're not going to be consistent rotation players. They're not going to be players who are just going to swing the entire season. But can they swing a game like tonight? Can they swing a little stretch that puts the Celtics over the top? The answer is yes, and we saw it tonight against the Los Angeles Clippers. Jaden Springer came into the game and affected late in the game, that stretch late in the game, and then the entire game, the entire result for the Boston Celtics. And if the Celtics lose this one, I don't know what we would have been saying in this post game, because the Celtics, that would have been every other game, winning, losing in the month of January after a 40-point win. I mean, it's the definition of insanity, what we were talking about with Franco the other night. You win big against the Magic, then you drop an overtime game against the Hawks, and then you win big against the Warriors. And if you would have dropped tonight an overtime game against the Clippers, you're just doing the same thing over and over and over again if you're the Boston Celtics. Seriously. And that's the definition of insanity, is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. If you're specifically a basketball team, you're the Boston Celtics. They've been defining insanity this month. Yet tonight, because Jaden Springer comes into the game, the Celtics, they're not on that streak now. They've won back-to-back games for the first time in nearly a month. And this is what we want to see. We want to see that spark off the bench. These guys, like I said, Walsh, Shireman, Springer, they're not going to be, even Kada. We're not mentioning Kada, but Kada as well. He's been that player. We'll mention Tillman too. Tillman hasn't been that player at all this season. Kada more so. We talked about Cornette, who actually started tonight, but Cornette can be that player as well. Any of these players, if they can come in and provide a spark for even just the littlest of stretches, that can flip a game, and that can flip an entire stretch for the Boston Celtics in terms of wins and losses, as we saw tonight. So great job from Jaden Springer on the defensive end of the floor tonight, hitting a big shot down the stretch as well. And great job for Joe Mazzulla, on actually trusting Jaden Springer to keep him in the ball game, not going with somebody else when he knew Jaden Springer had the hot hand defensively, and also just experimenting with some of these other guys like Walsh and Shireman early in the game when this was really the opportunity to do so for the Boston Celtics.